Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today I sit down with a man who is a damn good example of being a Texan, a ship captain who enjoys everything the Texas outdoors has to offer and then some. This is my conversation with John Dunaway. With that being said, we're ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Pull that microphone just a hair closer. Yeah, perfect.
That's a good distance.
Yes. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Go for it.
Hey, I'm John Dunaway.
Okay. Well, yes, I got Mr. John Dunaway in the chair. And this one's going to be cool because I feel like, and we talked about it just a split second ago, there's a lot of things that you do. I'm sure there's more things that, or less things that you don't do than you actually, do, which is really cool. And I kind of want to just start off the jump. And that's the only question I really ask besides the last two is, run me through the first memory you have in the outdoors and kind of your chronological progression as an outdoorsman or a waterman, if you will.
Yeah, so I grew up outside of Houston in the suburbs. My dad had grown up not in the suburbs, and I can recall vividly constantly telling us, like, this isn't how kids should be raised. I hate living in these neighborhoods, and so my great-grandmother lived out a little outside of town and had 2 acres or something, nothing crazy, but it was a little bit of space. We went there almost every Sunday, and as soon as we got there, we were just cut loose. It was like, go climb those pecan trees. If you go down the ditch, just like watch out for snakes. And I can recall getting my first BB gun and shooting a robin. Don't go do that, right? And coming inside is like, my parents were in there, my grandmother, my uncle. I remember coming in like so pumped that I had done this by myself. I put it in the crosshairs, a little scope on a daisy pump, and come in. My uncle's like, yeah, you're not supposed to shoot that. So let's get a box and let's go bury it and don't do that again, And that's not like the way I'm an outdoorsman now. But then I felt so accomplished. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 8. And so, yeah, that's like where we started going outside. And then she had a gun cabinet back there, and I was always intrigued by it, right? It was in this back room. It had this cool fluorescent light over it, and there were all these guns, and it was always locked, and clearly I couldn't get into it. But it just looked like this museum piece because she didn't sleep in that back room, and there's just this gun cabinet that was lit up. It just looked like something you weren't allowed to touch, and so you're like more curious about it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, these are old. Like, this doesn't look like anything now that we have. They were all stuff that had belonged to my grandfather. And, then my dad would say some stories like he had used this when he was a kid, blah, blah. And now I've got several of them stashed back in here. Yeah. And then, so hearing those stories, obviously living in a neighborhood, we weren't just going outside and shooting our BB guns or whatever, but we were let loose. It was like, we got home from school, it was like, get outside, go ride your bikes, go build jumps, whatever you guys are up to, so be it. But over there was this, and at the time, I didn't think much about it in this sense, but now I do feel like it was like I was looking back into history in the past. It made me really curious, like, okay, well, when did you use these? Like, where did y'all go? You were duck hunting, and I hadn't got into duck hunting yet. My dad wasn't taking us back then. And it just led to these ideas, right? So just in my own mind, I was building these stories and creating these images of what I thought it would be like.
Yeah.
So those are some of my first memories.
That's awesome. And then like chronologically speaking, like from that point forward, what I was getting at, like your progression as an outdoorsman or a waterman, like I can assume that like my better question is, when did you from that point forward, when did you start feeling like a more raw passion for the outdoors, more so than just, being able to go have fun or even look back into history, if you will?
Yeah. So, my dad was not a big hunter when I was a kid, right? So the gun cabinet was just a lure, but he was hardcore into fishing. And that's what my parents did, right? Well, we'd go down to South Texas all the time, started mostly in Rockport. Although we lived here, we didn't fish around Galveston Bay at all that I can remember.
Was the fishing still considered to be hot in Galveston Bay?
To be honest, I couldn't tell you.
Heard. Okay.
Yeah, because he was like, no, like we're not fishing here. And he wanted to get out of the city. right? He was like, let's get as far as we can from Houston. So we'd go to Rockport.
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy and Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy and Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself prepping for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a shout.
Spent a lot of time there. It was much quieter, and he loved South Padre, just the clarity of the water. You can imagine this is like mid 90s. Mm-hmm. South Padre was much smaller than what it is today. This is before the MTV Spring Break had even caught on to it.
Yep.
And so we would go down there, had a place down there, and he was fishing all the time. So that was like my first outdoors kind of stuff.
Okay.
I was a saltwater junkie. We'd get up and go fishing on the bayside, and then come back in, have a lunch break, take a nap, whatever it was, and then go across the street and we'd go surfing.
Oh, okay.
And so just the whole idea of the island was this giant playground. You could fish on one side. We would swim off the dock. My parents would sometimes go fishing, just leave us at the motel before we had a place. And they were like, try not to walk on the oyster reefs and catch your feet up,
Yeah.
And they're like, there's snacks here, here's breakfast laid out and we'll be back by lunch, possibly. Mm-hmm. Dude, we would fish off the dock. We would swim off the dock. We would go wandering up and down those little coves because now they're all like townhouses and everything. But back then, it was just mangrove coves for a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And they'd get us a bunch of chicken necks and chicken legs, and we'd run crab traps. And dude, we would fill up these coolers, and then they would invite all their friends over, and we'd have these big, they'd bring back the fish, watch them clean them, and then we'd have all these crabs, and they'd end up having these grill outs and crab boils and everything. And so it was just going to South Padre was a playground to us.
That's awesome. And you mentioned your dad actually had gotten into a little bit of the fly stuff, or you mentioned like the fly shop, and I would really like for you to kind of get into it now that we're in the talking about the Lower Laguna Madre right now.
Yeah, totally. So like I told you, I have this weird love-hate with that place, and the hate has long since gone away. Again, it was this playground, but then as I started getting a little bit older, it was almost like we were forced to go down on the weekends, right? And I can recall both of my parents, like, you guys, because I got a younger brother. He's 3 years younger. His birthday today too.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, man, he's so cool. But they would make us go, right? Because that's where we're going. Hey, pick us up out of school. Southwest had super cheap tickets down there. Oftentimes my dad would already be there. My mom would grab us out of school, run to Hobby, fly down to Harlingen, go to the island for the weekend, come back. And you get into middle school and you're becoming a teenager. You want to hang
your friends. Yeah.
Okay. Right. And, on the weekends it's hard to take friends. During the summer, friends would come down and everything, but I didn't want to go. And I start throwing a stink because I want to hang out with my friends and chase girls and do all that kind of stuff. Right. And again, I can recall my parents being like, you're a spoiled brat. Like, you don't know how good you have it. Right. It was like, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate it for what it was. And they were fishing so much. So it goes from this, I love this place because it's a playground, to now I want to spend more time in the city. Right. Like with my friends and all that kind of stuff. And then they were fishing all the time. So we'd often, I wanted to go surfing. I got tired of fishing because we were doing it almost every morning, it felt like. And all I wanted to do was surf. Mm-hmm. But I had to wait for them to get back because that's one thing they didn't let us do. They were like, you can't walk from the bayside over, and right across the street it was trash, right? It's just beach breaks. So we'd go down to the park, right? And surf off the jetties and all that kind of stuff. I was like, fishing's in the way of the surfing. I don't want to do this, And then I got into wakeboarding, and I was like, I just want to wakeboard on the bayfront and go surfing on the, Gulf side. Yeah. And he wanted to fish. Like, freaking, excuse my language.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Like, I hate this place. Hate having to come down here. And my mom won't like the story, but I was in intermediate school one time, and she was taking us to the airport, and I was throwing a huge fit. And she literally took her shoe off and just whacked the garbage out of me. I was like, and I deserved it. Clearly, I was probably running my mouth.
Being like, I want to catch redfish now.
Yeah. He was like, you guys don't know how good you have it. You little brats. And it's well deserved because we were in that sense, like we had the world at our fingertips down there, relatively speaking. Dude, you could wander. And so to go back, this is early 90s into the, early mid 90s and then into the early 2000s when we kind of petered out. I was in high school and we got rid of the place. But so I saw that heyday of what's kind of cool now or is becoming cool again. Like the guys in the short shorts and they were like, right. That bay tan, the white guys that are so dark, they're not Hispanic, but they got that, right?
Yeah.
And their hair was long. And man, I can't remember there were these two guides and I can't remember their names. And they had like curly hair and mustaches and the old hats, the old photos.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
They were just total legends. Like,
that's so cool.
These guys are cool, and everybody was hauling fish back then. It was just, you went out and you were catching fish. It was just a matter of how big was it and how many were you keeping and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, my dad ended up getting into fly fishing. I don't know what the catalyst for that was, what had sparked it, but being down there, knowing all those guys, Dad ended up opening a place called Padre Outfitters, and it's across from, if you're on South Padre, it's across from the Dairy Queen. I think it's now like a Buffalo Wild Wings.
No, the Dairy Queen is there. Dairy Queen's still there, but what?
No, across the street, it's like a Wingstop. Or?
Yes, of course, yeah. That was right next to the Meatball Cafe and the other dollar store for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had that building over there, right? And he had a Silver King. It was this like aqua blue Silver King that sat out front. He brought in a skiff, and people down there were like, "Yeah, this isn't gonna work." Like. Right, Texas had their own realm of flats boats.
Yeah, scooters.
Yeah, we had a Flatlander. Those guys in Port Lavaca were building them, and with the raised tower. And I can tell you other stories about vividly being in South Bay and being up there with my dad one time and just he's throwing like a red worm and I'm throwing a gold spoon and just watching these like redfish come out of the potholes there because the water was crystal clear, and you'd see them come out of the pothole and then they get lost in the grass and just whack this gold spoon. It was like, and you were up so high so you could see, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to the
everybody's back to the story.
Back to the stuff. Yeah. And everybody's like, yeah, these skiffs aren't going to work. Crossing the bay is treacherous and not all shallow. That thing's never going to work. Blah blah blah. Well, look, today, everybody's rocking skiffs. Yeah,
there's a bunch of skiffs now, especially when you have tournaments now. It is pretty impressive to see how many skiffs actually are from that area now.
Yeah. Wow. And so Eric Glass had, it was tying flies in there, running some of his charter stuff, but he was in the front corner. You'd walk in, he was on the back wall. Ruben Garza and his wife, Sandra, were, golly, I mean, it's like 20 something years ago. More than that. It's got to be like 25 plus. They were young and they were running the shop. And I actually learned to cast a flat rod from Chico Fernandez, of all people.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
But they had a big grand opening. He brought him in. And then again, I'm a young kid. I didn't know who he was, what kind of legend status. And here's this guy just like, I just remember being really stoic in the way and just teaching me. So I'm out there like, throwing, the lines going back and just going across the street. And every now and then they'd be like, wait, there's a car coming or something. And we were learning to cast out back behind that shop. But yeah, I got to fish with Eric Glass and it's wild.
That's crazy.
I caught a snook off of our dock, and it's funny. I hadn't seen him for 20 plus years. Was down dove hunting down there, and a buddy was like, "Hey man, I booked a trip with Eric Glass. You want to go?" I was like, "Oh yeah." And we just caught up. He's like, "Man, you remember that snook you caught off the dock?" You know how he is? Just like super laid back guy.
Totally.
Yeah. And so there's these wild, and now I'm like, oh, these guys are icons now, but they were icons back then. They were doing stuff that nobody else was. Like nobody was really fly fishing down there.
Yeah, totally agree. The more I talk to people about guys like Eric, guys like Rick, guys like Chuck Skates and Wade Duncan and stuff like that, like the more you realize like how involved they really were. But the main emphasis I'm trying to make is how involved a guy like Eric Glass was. Like, I was over at Sportsman's Finest the other day, or literally yesterday, and I brought up a concept that I had, kind of a project revolving around Eric. And the guy was telling me, man, like he was one of the first guys working with Sims. He was like really like pushing that, and he's really brought so much out of Texas, and you don't really understand how much of it was Eric because he's always been so soft-spoken.
Yeah. It's funny, right? Because there was this like untapped playground that people didn't give much thought to. Yeah. Like, oh, it's just guys down there bay fishing, in their short shorts and wading. It was a lot of wade fishing.
Mm-hmm.
That was
that
was the big thing.
Totally.
And he found this ability to, man, we can explore all these back places and we can get into them, quieter and I guess everything that went with it.
I have a funny story about Eric, actually. So I was on the phone with Tom Horby almost a year ago, and he was telling me a story, and he thinks, like 80% sure he thinks it was Eric Glass. And I called Eric to confirm. Eric can't remember this, but when he was still kind of going up and down the coast between here and Rockport, stuff like that, Horby was somewhere just north of Mansfield maybe, and he had seen two guys with fly rods, and he went out to fish, and when he came back there was a note on the thing and it said, "Hey Tom, we are fly fishermen too." And he, from that day, always thought that was Eric Glass. It was such a weird thing to say, but who else was fishing back then, like fly fishing? So I don't know.
Right.
But anyways, I didn't mean to take too much away from your chronological story. I think that's super important. Yeah. So you had the shop, and then you kind of went through high school and stuff like that. You sold the place, and then how did you end up in your profession? Was there a long story how you got there? Or was it just from the very beginning, hey, like I want to be at the helm?
No. So I will condense this real quick. So the fishing was driving me crazy. I didn't want to do it. And then they had the shop, and I remember he brought in, like, it was an old school, I think it was a Columbia shirt. It was old school camo, right? The old school brown. Yeah. And everybody else back in those days weren't Real Tree and all the very basic patterns, right? I don't even think Advantage Wetlands was a thing that was out. I remember seeing that. I was like, that is the coolest shirt. Like, I want to wear the old camo, which led to my first duck hunt was actually in South Bay.
Okay. Definitely glad you're going to this story, not just jump to what I asked. So keep going, please.
Yeah. So that was my first duck hunting thing. And I had the bug. I was like, this is what I like. I'm out in the saltwater. I'm outside. But the whole hunting thing just had my attention. I don't know. There was just a different, like, because bay fishing, I wasn't fly fishing the way he was. It was a lot of corks. We're fishing the sidewalk back there across from the old Cullen house when we could go back, or when I did go with him and we were doing, like spot casting on stuff. That whole stalking thing was fun. You're like, man, this is like finding them in their element, trying to trick them versus hey, the cork's floating. I wonder what's going to get it, and I can't see it anyways. Yeah. So the hunting thing was that pursuit of, man, you can see them, and you're like trying to coax them in and everything. And then, I went off a deep end into that. Clearly, I just turned 40, and I'm like, I don't feel like I'm slowing down at all. It's probably gotten more chaotic. I just want to duck hunt and bird hunt in general. Yeah. So
that's all. Do you remember like that first duck hunt?
Yeah. So way back in South Bay, I remember the tide being incredibly low.
Classic.
Yeah, right. All blown out. Probably shouldn't have gone out. And I think Ruben was with us. I want to say he was. I should confirm that with him. Remember them cutting a bunch of mangroves, making a little mangrove bush. Had a good buddy of mine, friend, since we were in kindergarten. And he will tell you that this didn't happen, but I'll never forget. These birds come in. They're in the decoys. They're like, shoot them. I think we're like 12, right? And I swear my buddy shot like from the hip pretty much right through the mangroves, blew the mangroves out. And everybody was like, okay. Like,
you're done.
Yeah, you're done. This is unsafe. And he still tells me, he's like, that's not true. I'm like, I vividly remember you blowing all the mangroves out and the ducks flying off and be like, I don't even think we shot anything that day, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. Because there was no water. Like the decoys were pretty much
dry.
Sitting dry.
God damn.
But yeah.
That's such a cool story. I can see why you like it.
Yeah. It was just, it was an adventure.
Totally. 100% agree. And then, so now run me through from that point, your progression more so as a professional.
Yeah. So fast forward, I had wanted to be a naval aviator. My grandfather was. I thought that was the coolest thing. Like, I'm going to fly jets and everything. I'm going to do the carrier thing like he did in the Navy. Was a junior in high school. I've told this story a lot, but I was having dinner with my mom one night and she asked, what are you going to do when you grow up? I was like, I don't know. I don't want to work in an office and I really don't want to be in the military because at that time I was like, it's too many rules. I don't want to just, it was too much order for me, discipline kind of way.
Yeah.
Right. I was young and rambunctious. And she's like, you ever thought about doing what your dad does and work on ships? I'm like, wait, I can get paid for that? Yeah. And the line that I remember, she's like, how do you think we pay for everything? I'm like, I don't know. I never considered it a job. Like, you go to career day and everybody's parents come in and they're like, oh, I work, whatever. They're well dressed. And my dad shows up with like starched jeans and his shirt tucked in. And he's like, yeah, I work on tugboats, And you're like, and back then pre 9/11, you could go there and climbing on tugboats, know. And when he'd come home, I didn't realize it then until years later when I was doing it. And I'd smell my clothes that were off the ship. I'm like, oh, that's a distinct smell of diesel fuel. Because everybody's clothes were dirty in the same laundry machine, and it just has this stench of oil and diesel.
Wow.
Yeah. So like tugboats had my allure. And then he started working on ships. And yeah, that was cool. I can get paid.
Yeah.
And then I never looked back.
Well, how is that? Like, I'm curious as to the schooling that's involved in there and just like the timeline of how you actually, because like going through it, like funny thing I wanted to mention on this episode was driving over here. Everything looks like Texas up until the last like 6-7 miles. And then it's just like, it looks like you're in a completely different city or just a different state. It's kind of jaw-dropping, like how the containers, how big the ships are and stuff like that. I've never really truly seen besides like that one retired naval ship that's in Corpus. Like I've never really seen ships
carrier.
of that grandiosity. So I assume, being able to actually pilot those things takes a damn long time, or at least a skill that, takes a while to develop, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, it's actually really easy. Anybody can do it. Yeah. So I went to the Merchant Marine Academy, which is actually one of the 5 federal academies. And it's funny whenever you see them talk about, the federal academies get Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard. And then there's this little one, the Merchant Marine Academy. And it's still funded by the government. Came about from World War II. But yeah, 4-year school. Out of that, I spent 1 entire year of it in 2 different parcels working on commercial ships as a cadet. They just send you out to sea and they give you a project like, hey, you got to do this stuff. But otherwise, you're pretty much just cheap labor for them. Go do as you're told, learn everything that you can. Got out. Then I sailed deep sea for 10 years. So 3 to 4 months on the ship, 3 to 4 months off. It was a great schedule for me. I love that kind of lifestyle. Obviously tough to have a family life. You got to have somebody, luckily my wife adjusted to it, that's down with it and just find the positives of it. You're like, he's gone a long time, but when he's home, he has
a long time.
Yeah. You got 0 responsibility. Like you don't do anything for that ship. Affords you the flexibility to go places and do things and not live on a schedule like most people, contained to a weekend or whatever it may be. And then I got super fortunate and Houston was hiring and I was in the right place at the right time. And I think I had a pretty good resume and yeah, they managed to vote me in. And so now I've been a Houston pilot for 7.5 years now.
They voted you in?
Yeah. So every organization has X amount of people. So there's pilot organizations all across the world and they're all pretty much the same thing, right? Like your stuff gets put in, there's an application process, and then they go through the resumes and they pick people that they're like, man, we think these people are the most qualified and this is who we want to try to get.
Huh. That's I would have never guessed that
when
at
I
all.
say pick, right? I mean, you get hired.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so
that's actually really cool. Did you ever have any kind of close calls while you were captaining any of these bigger ships? I'm not expecting like what's it called, like the canal in South America or anything crazy like that, but just in general.
What kind of close calls?
You tell me.
I mean, yeah, I think I've got sea stories. Like I went to over 35 countries in that 10-year period. We did the Suez Canal, we did the Panama Canal. I never went around the Cape Horn, but we did do Cape Good Hope, South Africa over there, but was over there doing the whole Somali pirate thing in the heydays. I mean, yeah, we had hired gunmen teams on board, like had guys get up within range with the sniper asking for a green light to be able to shoot them.
Never gave a green light.
That I was just a lowly third mate and I was yelling for it. I'm like, I can see them very clearly. They're like 100 yards off, and there's a bunch of guys in 4 different boats, and they've got guns in there, and the sniper's yelling on the radio, and we had 5 guys out on deck. And ex SF Marine Corps guys, hired guns, and they wanted to do it. And then you know what? A couple hours later, you get these notifications on all the SAT-C, satellite communication stuff. And back then, when piracy was huge, there were daily emails. There weren't emails, but anyways, daily communications coming out like, hey, pirates are spotted here, or the ship got attacked, blah, blah. And in that position, a couple hours later, there was a car ship that was attacked and got boarded. And I've always thought of, man, what if we had taken them out? Like, those poor bastards that weren't armed probably wouldn't have been taken.
Damn, yeah.
That wasn't my call back then,
That's a crazy way to think about it. Wow. What do you think of the modern day anti-pirate defenses for some of these ships? Like, I'm sure you've seen some of them, right?
Yeah, most of them are a joke.
It's okay. That's what I was getting at. Like, I see that, and it's like, man, these guys are trying to, like, essentially, like, board y'all, rob y'all, and shoot y'all, and y'all are throwing, like, water cannons at them? Like,
yeah. I think I'm pretty vocal about it a lot of times, that bureaucrats and lawyers that are sitting in an office telling the people on the ship how they need to take care of and run the ship, when it's like, I have a license and you put me in charge of it, but you want to give me all your marching orders and you're not here to do it.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick backstory on it.
Please.
We were loading in Houston. Again, I was a lowly third mate, and I had this incredible captain at the time. And I remember being on the dock with one of the heads of the shipping line that we worked for. And the captain was like, look, we got 2 options here. Either we're going the long way around Africa, or you're going to give me a gunman team. And they were like, and I won't use his name. They're like, come on, Captain. That's ridiculous. He's like, it's not ridiculous. You have 2 options. He goes, actually, you've got 3. The third one is that I live in Houston. I'll just sign off. So you're either going to go around, you're going to give us a gunman team, or I'm going to go home. It's your choice. And they're like, come on. It's like, it's very simple. And we got a gunman team. He ended up having to sign off anyways. Like, his time was done. We had another captain on board. And the rest of that stuff, though, most ships that are going over there didn't want to pay those premiums, because hired guns are not cheap.
I bet.
Right? We're an American outfit carrying military cargo at times, or highly valuable stuff. So they opted to do that. Probably also helped their insurance premiums a lot for back in those days. The concertina wire we would wrap around the ship, and then you put all these gates up and everything's locked and the doors are locked and you got codes and passwords and everything. And you put water hoses about, and right, like the whole Captain Phillips story. Mm-hmm. When I watched the movie, you see like it's just blowing water everywhere. I'm like, that ship doesn't have enough water pressure to push that many hoses. Like, you guys rigged something up. I don't buy that all came off the fire pumps. Yeah. Because the pressure just wouldn't be that strong. Mm-hmm. So you direct a couple nozzles pretty much at entry points. And so the whole goal was that you were trying to focus the boat if you did get attacked, because you're not going to outrun them. People are like, how do you get on a big ship? You're like, it's easy. They just slam up against the side. You've seen it. Go on YouTube. You can watch it. So the water hoses were directed at a point where you wanted them to come alongside, right? They want to stay out of the water. You kind of allocate them to where you want them to be. If you have a gunman team, I mean,
it's a lot easier than that.
Yeah, they're sitting ducks. You're like, we know where they're going to land. It's going to be right there. And the same thing with the wire. It's all just like, you're hoping to put up a little bit of a defense that slows them down. And they go, less, like with us that time. They got close enough. They probed us, hung around for like 15, 20 minutes. And we're like, my thought is in their head. They're like, yeah, we can see the guns with those guys. Like, that's a bad chance. Let's just go wait for the next one that's probably not armed. So
that's crazy to think about.
Yeah. I mean, and I can remember we started with 6-man team, and then we had gotten down to 4. And then years later we had like 3 Sri Lankans, and to the point where we had gone from 6 SF Marine Corps guys.
Yeah. So you're outsourcing your guns now? That's crazy.
Dude, they were just chopping the budget constantly. They're like, well, you guys didn't get attacked. Like, the odds are pretty good.
There's a reason why we didn't get attacked. That's why.
Yeah. Right. And so by the end, we had these 3 Sri Lankans. And I remember on one trip, maybe I was second. No, I was chief mate. And then Kevin's like, they don't have any bullets. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, come to find out their ammo was taken. They would like we would pick them up in Sri Lanka.
Uh-huh.
I guess some kind of, I don't know, political loophole probably.
Probably.
Yeah, totally. They would come out in a launch. We would slow down off of Sri Lanka. You know, they would come out, they'd climb on board. They'd send us up the guns and we'd put it in, and it's all like logged and everything, whatever. But yeah, their bullets were taken by the Sri Lankan military and they didn't disclose it. Somehow the captain figured it out. We're like, you guys are utterly useless. We have 3 extra people we have to feed.
Yeah. And protect somehow.
Yeah. And you've got, I don't know, what do you want, a baseball bat?
Yeah. Fire extinguisher, maybe.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Was there anybody in the space, like when you were working your way up the ranks, that kind of served as an inspiration for you, or, you know, people and peers in the space that kind of helped you, you know, move yourself along through?
Yeah, totally. I had a guy, he was actually just here like a month ago. You know, this guy taught me so much. He was always there to watch for me. When I was a cadet, he happened to be my chief mate, and I didn't think much of him in general, right? He was just like a guy that I worked for. He didn't really do a lot for me at that time. And years later, when I would go to get on this heavy lift ship and I show up and who's the chief mate? It's him. Right? I'm like, whoa, I haven't seen you in like whatever it was, like 6 years or something, 5 years maybe. And then for the rest of my career, I worked with him. So like he eventually goes to captain and I was the third mate, and like I became his second mate, and then I became his chief mate. And when we were in Venezuela and we were taken pretty much hostage by the Venezuelan government they claimed we were arms trafficking. It was a political play.
Definitely would like to go into that, but please keep going.
Yeah. He was taken to jail for like 3 days.
What year was this?
Oh gosh. 2009, 2010 maybe.
Okay. So like right when it was, you know, starting to get like really dangerous, right? Because really dangerous was like 2008, I think. In like Chavez gets elected in 2008 or something around there. And that's when it starts to like really like, not avalanche, but like snowball down. Yeah.
And so, like we had gone ashore. I remember we were actually ashore and he called my cell phone. And I remember what the chief engineer was like, hey, did the captain call you? I'm like, yeah. What does he want? He's like, I don't know, but that's weird. He doesn't ever call us when we're ashore. And I called him. He's like, get everybody and get back to the ship. Like, what's going on? He's like, I'll explain when you get here. I was like, so we were in some mall or something, you know, like the mall had a bar and a place to eat, you know, like I'm not buying anything down there, but I remember the country just being rough in Maracaibo. Go back to the ship. Yeah. Find out there's this whole fiasco going on. Fast forward. They come aboard with like DEA caliber, right? Blacked out, paddy wagons, everything. Wanted to take everybody to jail except for 3. They had a warrant for all of us, like our passport numbers. I saw a photo of it. It's pretty cool. And took him to jail. Remember, he pulled me aside and was like, hey, here are my keys. This is where the keys of the safe are. You're in charge of the ship. I was like, whoa, okay, cool. You know?
God damn.
So
that must be scary. How did he get out?
I mean, like Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State back then, and she got involved. Like we had the consulate came down to the ship. They were like, look, Secretary of State knows about this. They're dealing with it. Just hang tight. You know, nobody else is going to jail. He's the only one that's there. Just let us know if they're not treating you good. We'll check in every day, blah, blah, blah. And eventually, so the office calls me and they're like, look, you need to get the ship off the dock. They want to move you. We'd been sent to the dock for like 2 weeks. Like, we want you to move out to the anchorage. And then when you get there, they're going to bring the captain back. They decided they're going to give us the guns back. It was all just a big misunderstanding. I'm sure there was a pallet of money that was probably flown in. I have been told that there was a pallet of money. That was
well,
flown
now I know you're sure.
Yeah. I never saw it, but yeah. And I remember being super jazzed up. It was like, they told me the night before. I'm like, man, I was probably his chief mate. So I was like 26. I don't think I had turned 27 yet. I'm like, man, I got to be captain. I mean, I was going to go like a matter of like half a mile off the dock to this anchorage, but I was stoked. Right. And I get dressed. I tuck my shirt in. I'm not wearing like my overalls or coveralls, wherever I normally used to wear, like rough out on deck. Get everything going. Everybody's letting go lines. And I see this car coming down the dock. It's like, that's strange. I'm like, what's this? Door opens. Here's the captain in the same clothes he was in when he left about 3 days ago. Looks, he's not bruised up or anything, but he just looked rattled.
Rough. Yeah.
He's rough, a bit rough. And he walked up. I was like, they're like, the captain's here. I was like, holy cow. We put the gangway down, like let him on. And I'm going down the ladder well to go like intercept him and talk to him because I don't know that he has any idea what we're about to do or anything. I was like, man, I'm so glad to see you, but I really wanted to do this by myself. And he goes, go get dressed and on deck.
Short-lived.
Yeah. I was like, dang, I was going to be the captain. So, I mean, that guy was a mentor to me. He always took care of me. Really, it's funny because juxtaposed, right? I'm 6'2", probably weighed like $190 back then. I'm probably like $198 now. And he's significantly shorter than I am, right? And so, but he's the captain, right? He's in charge. And it's like from a physical stance, I was in great shape. I'm young and all this kind of, right? Like bravado thing. And you don't have to be that to be in charge. He had, although he didn't have the physical prowess, he had the complete like control of a ship because he had always mastered that position as far as taking control, being responsible, and him going to jail that night was a great point of it, right? They wanted to take everybody except for 3. I think we were a crew of 15 people. And he told him, he's like, this is my ship. I'm responsible for the crew. I'm responsible for the ship. Therefore, you can take me to jail and me only. Do not mess with the rest of my crew. I was like, and I remember sitting there, like the entire crew is huddled back on the stern. And
this is in front of everybody then. Okay.
I was like at 2100. I mean, he's off to the side a little bit dealing with these guys, all these commandos and their guns are brazen and they're yelling at people and just being the way they want to be. And I had walked over to kind of observe what was going on. And everything like, you guys aren't going to lay your hands on him. Like, again, I'm 26, full of piss and vinegar. Yeah, exactly. Like, what are you going to take down the whole gang by yourself, dummy? And I heard him, saying that. I was like, that's a leader, right? Like, he's taking the brunt of all this. And then another time I was a young chief mate for him, but before that, first time chief mate, I remember coming down to his cabin one day to talk to him. I was like, I want to fire all these people. He's like, what? Why? Like, they're useless. It's taking us like 45 minutes to move hatches. They don't know how to rig the gear. They can't get anything ready. Like, they're lazy and they're slow. And he said, your job is to manage what you were given. You do not get to pick your team. The way you're going to be judged is in the way you can run whatever is given to you. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I didn't think about it that way. I thought I could just, you know what? I had 3 all-stars and like 7 that were dead weight. I'll just get rid of all
refresh.
of them. Yeah. Hit refresh. Let's see what else we get. Like the odds are that we'll probably get 1 or 2 good ones. We could just keep doing this, rinse and repeat, until I finally build an awesome team.
Wow. Or you could just build a group that truly knows how to work well. That's a question I was going to ask. Like, do you think that one of the reasons why you perceived him to be such like a master of that job was because he'd also mastered the art of garnering respect for who he was as an individual? Or like this commanding presence or like something along those lines?
No. So that's an interesting thing with him is that, and if you're listening, I hope that you understand this is the utmost respect, but he didn't command respect in that way. Like the captain I told you, this is not the same captain that was like, you're going to send me a gunman team or I'm going home.
Yeah.
That dude, he owned that ship at it. Like people respected that guy. They were just like, you didn't talk to him in the passageway. You didn't
look down. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. Young guy, good physical health. Like, and he was confident in himself and you could feel it when you were around him. Like this dude was confident. My mentor was not as confident, would often get rattled by stuff. And I can't put my finger on what it was. I think he truly cared about his role. And maybe that's what it was. He cared so much that his passion for it and what his duty was, like, made me just want to be better. I was like, I just need to be better for him. Like, if I can do my best job, I take that load off of his plate, which means he doesn't have to worry about the deck, which means he can worry about the other stuff. And like, he doesn't have to be concerned with all the other aspects. Not big physically, right? Often a little like soft in confidence, but he was good at what he did. And
do you think it's a reputation thing then, knowing that he was so good? Or maybe it was just that kind of passion over such a panache over a job that made people be like, I want to kind of appease.
Man, it's so tough. I honestly can't put my finger, because there were people that loved sailing with him, and then there were people that was like, I can't stand working with him. You know, he's too soft and this and that. And those ships were, I mean, they were physical. They were like grunt ships, right? We had twin 200-ton cranes. Everything was physical. You drug around chain, and you drug around wires and shackles. We could twin lift 386 tons on a full rig of spreaders and stuff. And it was just like, you know, we tucked I wore overalls that were filthy and grease, and I tucked them into my boots before I knew, you know, like the whole rigger look. People don't know, like the oil rig guys, they call like riggers, you know, or guys that rig shackles and hardware and everything that goes into that. You know, I wore a carbon fiber hard hat that was like full brim instead of like the junky white plastic one. You know, like there was this bravado to working on those that we would get along, like at a dock. It's like, yeah, that ship's soft. Like, you guys aren't as tough as
yeah, like we're real watermen.
yeah. Like, oh, that's cute. You watch containers come on and off your ship. Like, oh, you know, like we were those jerks.
Yeah,
but,
you like Deadliest Catch?
yeah. But, you know, we were going into Freetown, Sierra Leone. We were going into Douala, Cameroon. I mean, we were going into the Middle East. We were dealing everywhere, right? 35 countries. We usually went to the sketchiest places, way tucked off the beaten path. And you couldn't be soft because those people would just
eat you alive.
Oh, yeah. They could, right? And that's the thing. We live in such an incredible country at the end of the day. It's truly civilized, regardless of the chaos that you might have. Like, you're safe for the most part. You go to places like that, like you said, they will eat you alive. Because it's like it's a dog eat dog kind of world. And if you present yourself as soft to them, there's like, we're going to own this, you know, we're going to impose whatever fees we want or make up stuff, or we're going to steal things, and that kind of stuff happened. But like, I was in Freetown, Sierra Leone one time, and they were stealing all this grain from us. And again, being a super young bravado guy, I have the video, and I had gone out on deck and told the guys, like, when we're working out here at the end of the day, when they would generally come over, I would take my shirt off and stand out there, or I would work out on deck purposely, you know, just like show these guys, like, I'm not I was a young kid, you know, at the end of the day, these are adults and stuff. And I just wanted to show this, like, don't mess with me, you know, like, I will go toe to toe with you kind of deal. And that's how I controlled the deck with them.
Like, what do you mean stealing grain, though? How are they stealing grain?
Yeah. So at that time, we were carrying U.S. food aid.
Okay.
Like tens of thousands of bags, different things, lentils and flour and so forth. And at the end of the day, they had figured out that we would have to go up into the cranes to drive the crane, and then a guy would have to be up on deck with these wire slings to hook them up to close at the end of the day, because it would rain. And you don't want grain to get wet. Yeah, you get, the insurance company is going to write it off and blah, blah, blah. And they figured out that when we would have to go do that, we left the deck unattended. So the ship's port side to the dock. And there was a huge tide fluctuation. And the tide at the end of the day happened to coincide when the ship was really low. They could literally just step from the dock onto the ship, and they would climb into the cargo hold and just start tearing open bags. I mean, these people are starving to death, literally. You know, this is poor. I mean, extreme poverty, like rolling blackouts, if they were even lucky to be in
$7 a week type deal. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Those guys were getting paid. What did they get paid? $4. Yeah. $4 like sticks out of my mind.
A week or a month or?
That was, I want to say, for like a 7-day period.
That makes more sense.
I'd have to go back in my log and double check. And because I remember that value, because one time one of the guys, it's like, I want to show you my house. Right? And he had gone home and come back. And then he took me back. And I remember that the ride cost 50 cents. I was like, that dude just spent $1 to go home, get changed, and come back and fetch me off the ship to show me his house that's smaller than this little office space that we're in sitting right now.
Jesus.
Yeah. And he was pumped because he had electricity. And when we got there was no electricity. All right. The rolling blackout or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that dude just spent $1 round trip to come get me to show me. Like, that's how proud he was that he had acquired his own place with electricity.
Yeah.
But back to, so the random people off the dock would jump in the hold. They would tear open the bags. They would put it in backpacks. They would put it in trash bags, anything they could get it into. And then they would run off the ship as fast as they could. And then they go into town and they sell it.
Just for frame of reference, how big are these bags? Because I was thinking, why not just grab the bag?
They're 50 kilos.
Okay, so I see why.
110 pounds.
I understand now.
Yeah. and they're down in the hold too. Like, so as the cargo went down, it was probably like 12 feet to the top of it kind of deal. So the only way they can do it is
be piece by piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Quickly get to a ladder well, shimmy out. And it was pissing me off. Again, you're like, this is my ship. I'm responsible for the ship and the cargo on deck. You guys are stealing from me. And at the end of the day, I've got to go sit in there with the tally and figure it all out. And then I got to deal with the insurance adjusters that are down there. And then the office is wondering why we're losing so many back, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, not today.
It's all this goddamn paperwork.
Yeah, right. So shirt off, run around deck to the point where we were in there one day. I was like, today when they come on board, we're going in the hold and taking care of this. Like grabbing guys and throwing them down, like taking pocket knives, cutting backpacks off, tearing them up. And I don't care if you think I'm a terrible person. Like, at the end of the day, they were still stealing.
No, yeah.
And they knew they were stealing, and I had no problem with it. Like, this is my job. This is what I'm responsible for. I've tried to be nice. I've tried to talk to people. And so we set that straight pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then the guys that were being paid and were working on the ship, I talked to them. I made them a deal. I was like, listen, at the end of the day, you guys know we're going up in these cranes and doing all this stuff. If you will stay alongside, like the rail, the hatch coming,
like the entry point, if you will, where they were coming here.
Yeah, I was like, if you guys stay here and keep people out, okay, because bags are going to tear just naturally. When they get loaded, they're loading them in a conveyor belt. They're dropping in the pressure of them. Stuff gets torn, blah, blah, blah. Like, and so we put them aside every day. The stuff that was truly busted that we had to file and take care of. And I made them a deal. I was like, if you guys run this rail and you keep people off the ship from stealing, when it's all done, we close up, I will let y'all disperse all of that grain, whatever's left. And sometimes it was like 10, 15 bags, and they couldn't take it all, but it's like, you can fill up as much as you want and take it home. But it's like, you've got to trust me that I will give you this when it's done. And I'm trusting that you will protect my interest while we can't be present. And it turned into this. Yeah. They were like our little army. It was awesome.
Little grain militia.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That is so cool. Wheat warfare.
Yeah. And and you didn't work cargo at night. And that wasn't, so we'd go into town, just whatever we could find. And you leave the port and you go out, and the streets were just lined by people with, I remember very specifically, Energizer battery lamps.
Really?
Like a table with a little lamp, and what's behind them? Different variations. Sometimes a full bag that they had stolen off a truck that was going through town, or they had paid off somebody to give them a bag. Other people that just had a, plastic bowl filled with whatever much grain they had managed to acquire somewhere. And they would, with a little scale, and they were selling it all up and down the street. I was like, this is dog eat dog. Like,
yep.
Yeah.
Totally. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's wild.
Wow. I feel like we've hit it. We've hit a couple stories. I want to ask one more. No need. Sorry. This is why I'm here, right? Like, But I would like to do one more thing before we segue, because I want to know more of like how you got involved with the industry. And we went over it, but I think that's a really cool story, because you don't really expect someone who spends, 3-4 months at a time out at sea to really, be kind of in cahoots with some of these people who are always posting daily, stuff like that, getting attention of consumers and all of that sort. So I want to get into that. But before I do, was there one area in particular that you got to visit throughout the 35 countries that actually still holds real fondly in your memory?
Yeah, actually that time in Freetown, Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
And going to Buenos Aires, Argentina, two very different cultures, two very different scales of quality of life. In Argentina, my mom's Brazilian. I was born in Brazil. But I grew up and lived here in the States my entire life. And Argentina, there's just this very much like Brazil. Like, you go down there, people, when they speak, it's like they're singing almost, like there's love and passion about it. And I felt the same kind of attachment being in Argentina. And my mom will despise that because she's, like Brazil and Argentina are at odds with each other because of soccer, obviously. So anytime I say that, she's like, ugh, I can't believe you would say that. I love Brazil. Don't worry. So there was that. I love that culture. We get off the ship in 3-hour dinners, and I was like, man, this is living. Like these people, it's not as much of a rat race, like they take the time to enjoy each other's company and what goes into it. And then the opposite was in, Freetown, Sierra Leone, of seeing some of the worst poverty I've ever seen. Maybe the only one probably worse is in Mumbai, India. But being immersed in that for a week and going ashore, and everything from like eating off of 55-gallon drums that were used to be a charcoal grill kind of deal to riding scooters in the dark with people, like to get around because everybody rides motorbikes, to seeing Momo's house and how proud he was to say that he had electricity, although he didn't. And this story, so him and I don't know if it was his wife or just the mother of his kids. He had 2 kids, and they didn't live together. And so he's like, I want you to meet my kids, right? And so we're walking. There's no lights, like it's like favela kind of quality of housing. And me again, thinking nothing of it. Like I'm not in danger. Like it never once crossed my mind.
Everything's okay.
Yeah. Like, this is awesome. So we go down to this little house, and it's half the size of this room, right? And there must have been like 20 people inside of it. They had one TV in the corner. There was a door like right here on the right hand side, and it was kind of, think of an enlarged closet is what I can recall it as. What I remember is the TV was on the right because that wall was closer to the door, and then there's just all these kids and people piled up in there, And Momo calls his little boy out. He couldn't have been 3 years old, maybe, and he comes out and he screams bloody murder and runs behind his dad, and Momo starts laughing, right? Like, so Momo's the same, we were the same age. We're like 25. He was 25, 26. And he's dying laughing. It's like, what's so funny? He's like deathly afraid. What's going on? He's like, ho, ho, ho. He's like, John, he's never seen a white man. I was like, what? Like, dude, this is like 2011.
Yeah.
2012. I'm like, he's like, yeah, he has never seen a white man in person. And that memory alone was just totally caught me off guard.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like, how's this possible?
That's crazy. That's funny. I remember one time I was in Nicaragua with my family. We were just doing some fishing trip before I went off to school in tennis. And I remember driving over to this like one house that we had rented, and the poverty that you see is bar none. Like you just see like little tiny houses with a small fence, and here's a couple chickens and stuff like that. And the school is like, there's no AC. You can see through it. You see all the kids still like listening and learning, but like, damn well there's no curriculum. And it's like, oh my God. Like,
yeah, dirt floors are lucky if the roof is completely patched. I mean, that was another thing. We had all this lumber, so we would build these fake bulkheads, which are walls, right? Dividing it. We had, I think 6 different ports in West Africa. And so we'd use all this plywood to segregate, because sometimes the cargo hold is just too big. anyways, we would take that as well as some of the plastic wrap that we would have that would be laid over it, keep it waterproof, and like roofing tape, pretty much like this tar tape.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy would come down every day. It's like, John, you want to make a deal? Like, what kind of deal? You know, at first they would buy the lumber, they would buy the plastic, they would buy the tape. I was like, what are you doing with all this stuff? They would take it into town and sell it to people. They would take that plywood for the roof. They would lay the plastic sheeting, and they would use that tape to make it waterproof.
That's crazy.
We had like 7-ply plywood, maybe it was 8, I don't know. You know, if I just remember, and we had 2 giant pallets that had lived up on the forecastle, which is the most forward part of the ship, exposed to the weather from our crossing from Houston to West Africa, being rained on, you know, spray from the ocean getting on it. Wood's ruined. It's delaminating. And he was like, this is perfect. I'm like, why is that so good? He's like, because I can peel each, you know, I can take each ply off and sell it as a separate sheet. I was like,
what?
Yeah. And that dude would pay in cash, you know, like
how much was he paying you for these? Like the wood?
we sold like a couple $1,000 worth.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
and he's
so
just
cool.
pulling out
Yeah.
American cash, just wads of money. It's like, oh, this dude's kingpin.
Yeah, clearly.
He took me to dinner one time. So we go out to dinner, and him and his associate that he had, he's like, so you ready to talk real business? I was like, real business? Like, what are we about to get into?
Like, what have I been doing my whole life?
Yeah, right. I was like, we've been doing business all week. You know, I was like, I don't think I have anything left to sell. You know, maybe at the end we'll have like some plastic or whatever, some more plywood. He's like, no, I want real business. I want to buy fuel off the ship. I was like, no, I'm not selling fuel off the ship. What are you talking about? He's like, this is the first American ship we had. Everybody sells us fuel. Like, how are we even going to figure this out? Like, we send in records every day. Like, we tell them how much fuel we burned all in the last 24-hour period and how much we have ROB remaining on board. And, right? Everything's calculated for a voyage. He's like, oh, we can smudge all of those numbers. I'll bring a supply boat out. I've got a crew. We'll bring the hoses. Once you leave the dock, you know, like we'll come rendezvous with you in a position offshore. We'll pump it. And then you just start smudging your numbers for the remainder of the voyage. It's like, we're dealing in like, he wants to deal in hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash of selling fuel and selling cargo.
That's crazy.
He's like, look, I've got an insurance guy that'll come down. We can tell him whatever amount of bags that we want to disclose that are ruined from rain. I'll take the bags. You'll have all the proper P&I. So for all those office rats that live in there, I know this stuff goes on heavily. Like P&I, like, you know.
What's P&I?
Don't call me what it stands for. Like we call it P&I Club. It's like maybe principal and interest.
Okay. I just wanted to.
Yeah, like insurance.
Yes. Okay.
Not, take that back. It's not principal and insurance like your mortgage. It's like, yeah.
Because I mean, I just want to know kind of what realm that was in. Because I was thinking like product and like what is the highest?
No. Yeah, like P&I Club checks in on documentation and insurance and blah blah blah. Like this is who vouches for the records that are being told about cargo and claims and all that kind of stuff. He's like, yeah, I got a guy to come down and we'll write down whatever you want and we'll sell it. I did not sell anything. I was like, dude, I'm an American ship. And I make a really good wage, and I do not want to go to prison.
Yeah, I feel like other ships can kind of work with that.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And the more I thought about it, I was like, dude, this is so easy. I was like, they can smudge these numbers. I mean, like, okay, I'll make it really easy. Ship goes on a 90-day voyage, and you record how much fuel you burn every day. Dude, you can smudge that you burned 1/10 more, 2/10 more, multiply it by 90. You start we're dealing in tons of fuel, and that ship didn't burn a lot. So a big ship, you could smudge those numbers easy. You'd be selling that stuff all over the creation.
Yeah, I can only imagine. The hardest part would be kind of explaining it to the IRS, I would think.
They would never know.
You're dealing with cash, but like, well.
Oh, you mean like me coming home with piles of cash?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be telling the IRS if I was dealing.
Well, I'm not saying you're telling the IRS, but if you see you buy yourself a new Lamborghini, there's a problem.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's much people that are doing this with all kinds of stuff, and I'm sure there's very smart ways to do it. I've never engaged in it, but I guess he would just trickle it out slowly.
Yeah. Or like in Ozark, you just hire a family to do it for you.
Buy crypto.
Hey, hold on. Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, so then I kind of from that point forward, or like from whenever this was, when did you kind of start getting into the outdoorsy industry side of this space that essentially is the reason why I'm here today?
Yeah. So Instagram, whenever the heck that came out, what, 2012 maybe?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So like really early adopter of it. Ship didn't have internet. We would get emails 2 times a week kind of deal. It's like when we got to port, it's like buying a SIM card.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they come down and sell local SIM cards and oh my gosh, can I do something? And try to go find Wi-Fi to post something. Anyways, I had some random post. We were in Fujairah, UAE. We were at anchor taking bunkers, which is fuel for a ship. And I don't remember how I had signal. Like, I remember coming back to my cabin. Like, why is my account? Like back then, you get the heart with 100, and that was the most hearts that you could get.
Mm-hmm.
And then every time I just refresh it, it just kept showing 100, and it was like growing by thousands of people. It's like, what's going on? What's wrong? You know, like
it's broken.
Yeah, I mean, I probably had like, I don't know, 100 followers or something. Anyways, it got on BuzzFeed, and I didn't know what BuzzFeed was back then. And I guess somebody like top 10 Texas like accounts to follow when Instagram was like super hip, right?
Damn.
Had no idea what this was about, what was going on. I was just posting random stuff because I needed a creative outlet on the ship, right? Like you're doing physical labor and everything. And
totally.
I just wanted something else. I wrote in journals and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of got some traction. And then years later, the quote unquote influencer thing became something. And I never tried to do it. It was like, yeah, like Sperry? Totally. Like I wear Sperry's anyways. Like that's how they contacted me because I had a photo of like my shoes and my tattoos. And it started like stuff like that. I was like, man, I'm wearing this and using it anyways. Like I don't have to pretend that I like it. I actually do like it. And that just kind of naturally kept rolling along. And then I would meet people that worked for different brands or whatever it may be. I was like, oh, I know who that is, or I actually already own that. Like, yeah. And then the outdoor thing, I guess it's the same kind of way. I was just hunting and then just kept running across people and meeting people that were in brands or in that space doing stuff. And just, you know, one guy knows another guy and that person, then you go hang out with them. And it happens to be like 4 other people that are from something else. And I had an awesome career. This is not a career. Like Instagram photography, if people think that I'm rolling a pile of money off of it, I do not pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like offset some stuff, which is fun, but yeah, this isn't, that's not how I make a living.
It's not paying the bills.
It's like the question, like my mom, like, how do you think I pay for all this? I drive ships for a living. Like that's my real job. Yeah. This is just fun. The fact that I can hang out with my friends and do what I was going to go do anyways, you know, and wear the stuff that I'm going to be wearing anyways. I'm like, yeah, I'm just living this life. Like it's just who I am. It just happens to work out.
That's so cool. And it's one of the questions I had is you're in cahoots with Howler Bros. You're in cahoots with Turtle Box, I believe. And who else are you in cahoots with more or less in I guess like the fly side or fishing side of the industry?
Oh, the fishing side.
Or just in general, we'll just pick something and run with it here in a minute. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any like big partner. I don't have any.
I guess if it's not under contract, then obviously never mind, right? But I just figure.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I don't really have any contracts in the fly fishing. I'm just a ton of buddies that fish, you know, like obviously like Dylan Schmidt and Brian Little with Sabine. And I absolutely love fishing with JT every year. It's like a spiritual journey to go fish with him once a year. Truly. Yeah, this happened. I think that they're my friends. Like at least I think like, you know, like to say that when I hang out with them, I feel like it. Yeah, I just through association got to know them and then spend time with them and love doing that kind of stuff. You know, I don't get into the fly fishing realm of like pursuing, because I think there are people that are, what's the word, like masters of their craft. And I feel that I enjoy it thoroughly, but I'm not aficionado. And so I don't even want to play in that space of trying to work with a brand because I'm like, dude, there are people that make their living off that and live and breathe this, you know, like a JT and a Mangum and those kind of people. Like that's not my thing. I just love getting to do it.
Totally.
Right. But when it comes to waterfowl, like I freaking love duck hunting, you know, like that's my jam. And so that I'm like, yeah, I'm all in with working with people on that because I'm going to be doing this hardcore anyways. And so I can get feedback on product or whatever it may be because I'm using it all the time.
Okay.
So yeah, like I was super lucky that Howler asked me to be at Hermano many years ago. And I'm truly grateful that whole family of people and the crew from the office side and, you know, company side to the true Hermanos, and had them at my house and been to places with them. They're just awesome humans.
What are some places you've gotten to travel through that connection that you are fond of? And I feel like it's also a hard question to ask because you went so many other places through your own volition driving a boat, right? So looking at just more so the stuff that you've been able to do with Howler, what are some of the things that you kind of, I guess, just hold fondly, or things that you maybe like an event every year get excited for, et cetera, et cetera?
Man, you know, obviously Howler's in Austin, and I do not live in Austin. Some people think I do, but I don't.
I thought you did up until yesterday.
You're like, man, that Google Maps is not where I thought it was. Unfortunately, I've had to miss so many of those rad trips that they've done. Rick will be like, hey, these dates. I'm like, oh, I'm working. I mean, I work 2 weeks out of the month. I have this incredible schedule. I'm like, how do all the events happen on the 2 weeks that I'm always working, you know? Or especially like in the early days when I was a deputy, I didn't have this schedule. I worked pretty much all the time. And so I couldn't take off or whatever it may be. We've done some fun stuff here. We did that tanker surfing with them and had Nate and Nacho down. Yeah, that was a blast. Did the Frogman mutation actually here. And then other stuff is like hunting videos. You know, obviously Howler's not in the hunting realm. That's just what I'm fortunate. I wear that every day. It's just like a rad outfit, you know. Like they have stuff for everything, you know, surf trips and fly fishing and all the kind of fun stuff, just going out and about. And then I get in the hunting realm, which they're not into. And there was a podcast a long time ago with Rick and Chase, and they went over what I want to recall was like 10 things that Howler is not, because the question was something along the lines of, like, you guys were approached by so many people. How do you know when it doesn't fit? And I want to say that they had a list of 10 things, and they said, like, we have a list of 10 things that we know that we're not. So it's really easy. We just go down this list, and if it hits one of those boxes, it's not us. And hunting's not their thing. You know, and I wear it when I hunt, like especially upland or dove hunting and whatever. Yeah. But that's not their space. And that's what I've always loved and respected with those guys. They're like, dude, you don't have to get out of hunting. Like, that's not our, you know, persona. Like, we're fly fishermen and surfing and, you know, that lifestyle. They have nothing against hunting. They're just the brand imagery of that. And that those
doesn't want to be something it's not, doesn't want to reach. I get it.
Yeah, right. Like the company is so confident in what they are and who they are. Yeah. You know, it's like, I love it. I mean, I can see it.
I mean, you got guys like Carter. I mean, Carter just got hired on full time as their photographer, and then you got guys like Rick Wittenbreaker and stuff like that. And you can understand why there's so much, like, and I've used this word already once, but there's so much panache behind like the Howler brand, the logo, and the image, stuff like that. And I completely understand where you're kind of getting at right now.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where we were shooting a video one time, and Chase and Andy were here, and like how meticulous they were with like the scene that we were doing. It was kind of I mean, right? Like you've seen the Howler videos. They're slapstick, but they've got this message or whatever it may be. They're telling this story in the way they want to it, and how particular they got on certain things. It's like, wow, really? Like that's what catches his eye, that he doesn't feel that it fits. It's like, man, no wonder the brand is what it is, because these guys know what they want it to be, and that's it. Yeah. It's what they want it to be, right? And they just go after it full bore.
I totally get it. When you finish working 2 weeks, you have 2 weeks off, and you mentioned you're a hunter at heart. What is there anything that kind of like, you know, gets you excited for, I guess, coming back home? Obviously, I'm sure one of the big things is family, stuff like that. But any particular side of like the hunting stuff, it doesn't have to be duck hunting, or just little particulars that you kind of look forward to?
No, honestly, I like to be social. Like my wife will tell me that I guess I'm driven off the energy of people. And so like when I'm free like this, like whether it's going to cook outside here or cooking with somebody else or fishing with somebody or going shooting photos, I mean, wandering around in the outdoors, honestly, I just like being around people and feeding off of their energy. I'm like, man, like, what are they going to teach me? You know, like what's something interesting they're going to say today? And I think that's why waterfowl, I've always, now why I like it so much is because it's a huge community, right? Like when you're in the blind, like there's a lot of time you're cutting up and you're around people and immersed in it, right? Like, whereas deer hunting, you're often by yourself, you know, in your own thoughts, and that's got its own value. And I enjoy doing that for meat hauling, but it's not my jam overall. Yeah, it's being around people. It's the same thing. Like when I come home from work, you know, my 2 weeks, I'm based out of my house. I'm coming and going, all kinds of weird hours and stuff. But like coming in the door and seeing my kids run into that laundry room, like as if I've been gone for 6 months, like it's the coolest thing. And or to come in the laundry room sometimes and maybe they didn't hear me come in and I can hear them around the corner laughing and I just chuckle inside and like that silly comment of like, oh, my heart's so warm, you know, like, yeah. But I feel it. I'm like, man, to know that they are so happy, you know, and they're living in this little bubble or this little world of their own, and that hopefully my wife and I are doing a good job providing for them, and that they're so comfortable in this atmosphere that we've been able to give them. I'm like, this is everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel the same way with people. I'm like, if I can bring you into my space, like I feel incredibly fortunate that I have a space that I can open up to people just to hang. Like,
yeah,
there's no end goal of having people swing by or, you know, I don't cook for people to be like, did you taste this? Isn't that freaking amazing? You know, like, no, it's not that. I'm just like, dude, isn't this fun? Like,
yeah.
I hope that it's good. And if it sucks, like, how can we critique it? Or like, what should we change? Like, no, I just get a thrill out of that. Like,
totally. What do you like to cook?
Everything. Like,
I'm big into steak. I've never gone into brisket though. I've tried it once. Never been good at smoking.
Yeah. I mean, I do it for the house. Obviously it takes a lot of time and I'm not an aficionado and there are people that are really good at it. I think I make it okay brisket. I love playing on my Santa Maria out there. You know, I'm full-fledged open fire kind of deal. I'm like, man, you can't set the temperature how you want. Like you got to figure it out, you know? And like, so it's always, to me, I guess it's a challenge every time, right? I'm like, okay, the fire's this big, the grate I should go this high right now, or that, you know, this ribeye is 2-inch cut and this little strip is like, you know, 3/4 or an inch, whatever. And like it's going to take them different temps and different times to reach those temps, whatever, and adjusting it. And yeah, as you can tell, I like to tinker, right? Like,
yeah.
Most people will be like, why do you want to put so much effort into cooking your food?
I definitely think there's a reason to put effort into cooking your food. I love cooking. It's one of my favorite things to do. One of the questions I had is I asked you earlier in regards to, you know, someone who may have motivated you or inspired you or someone who you aspire to be in the captaining space, but didn't ask you that about duck hunting. Who's someone that actually you kind of hold in high regard? Someone who maybe you technically could say you aspire to be, or someone who kind of just shows you what a real duck hunter should be like and act like?
I don't think I have anybody.
Really?
Yeah, because to me, duck hunting isn't an end goal. Whereas in my professional career, there was an end goal, right? Huh. Like, I want to reach captain, you know, I want to become a captain, and before that I got to be a chief mate, and then I want to be a pilot. And there were skill sets to all of that. Like there were things I had to achieve to do it and gave me fulfillment. With duck hunting, honestly, I just want to be out there with my friends.
That's a really interesting answer. I would have expected someone like you would have had like, yeah, this guy, whatever.
No, we get like, you know, in the waterfowl space, everything's different. Like the way I hunt on the Texas coast is different than just like a couple minutes up the road hunting in the timber, which is different than the way the guys in Arkansas hunt, which is different than the way guys in the Panhandle hunt and people in Oklahoma on, you know, dry field or whatever. It's all different. And so for me, like, I'm not going to be an excellent dry field hunter. Like, because it's not in my backyard. And the way I hunt doesn't really correlate to that. Like, decoy spreads are different and calling's different and what it goes into it. Like, the end goal is the same thing, getting out there and coaxing these birds to come in. But yeah, I don't think I have anybody that I aspire to be like, because I think they're all their own, in their own right. They're good at what they do. And I just respect people that want to be out there. That's it. I just want to be around the guys that when I go out there and we have a crummy day, they're not over there kicking rocks and all pissed off, Like, yeah, that sucks. I get it. Like, I want to have a banger day too, but it's not always going to happen. And if they can enjoy the rest of that process, dude, if you can have a good time with people in, I don't want to say the worst of conditions, right? Like,
but that's a good way to put it, though. In less than favorable conditions, if you will.
Yeah, less than favorable outcomes.
Okay, better way to put it.
If you can still finish that day and laugh and high five each other and have had a great time, then shooting up all of them and going home and cooking them, you're like, that's a bonus.
Totally.
Right? But the rest of it, that was the whole point I got out there.
That's it. So I guess you just like being surrounded by people who have a passion for or appreciate the minutia.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
So I feel like that kind of is cohesive with the way that anyone will pick some of their favorite fishing buddies. It's like, I'd rather be with someone that, I can kind of give shit to if he screws up. But at the same time, I want to have someone there that if, I know that I didn't put anyone I didn't put us in the right spot at the right time, he's also not going to, bitch and moan and kind of bring the vibe down. I feel like it becomes more of a hangout more so than, like you said, it reaches an end. Like, it is a void of an end goal. It's a better way to put it.
Yeah, totally.
Huh. That's interesting. I like the way you said that. Is there any places that you kind of look forward to maybe visiting in terms of as an angler, or have you, like, it seems like what I'm kind of getting at is you seem to be duck hunter first, then everything else comes second. I feel like maybe traveling to fish isn't something that you'd be able to do, or is it something that you actually like, hey, I have a plan to travel here and da-da-da and whatever?
That's definitely growing, right? Like,
yeah.
As my casting gets better and I'm more confident in that, I know that I can push to go to other places. So obviously, like, oh, go to Florida and meet up with Dylan, right? He's constantly like, just come down, when he's
Dylan's cool. I like Dylan. He helped a lot with that book. Some of my favorite motion pictures he took.
Oh, that dude is so good.
Super talented.
But actually, before I knew, I was following all of his stuff. And then I threw that little dove hunt in South Texas. And I remember reached out to him and Marty when they were doing Bad Fish together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, man, do you guys want to come to this thing? They're like, yeah, we would totally come. I was like, what? Because I loved his photography.
Yeah.
He's got these wild colors, but they're not like out of place kind of deal. Like, they work the way he does it. Mm-hmm. And he just always captured things different, I felt, than most people were delivering. So he always had my attention.
He has a really good eye. There's that one picture of there's a skiff and tarpon, but he flipped it upside down, so you see the reflection first, so it looks like the right image is actually upside down. And when I saw it, it's like damn, like, I don't got an eye like that. Like, that's something special for sure. That
dude, he sees different for sure.
Yeah. One of the things I want to get into that I thought was real funny was before we started this was the writing that you do a lot on some of your posts. Like, and I mentioned it, and I even wrote it in the little note that I left for you on the book there. But one of the things that I really enjoy doing is, like, whenever I see one of your posts, like, you tend to always write a really interesting or at least eloquent story that kind of, helps, break the mundanity or mundanity of what it is, of what scrolling through Instagram feels like sometimes. And I liked your creative process, if you would kind of get into that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I was telling you, like, how they haphazardly happened. Yeah, again, like, right, Instagram's not my business. And, I got all those followers in the heyday of it. And then I didn't play their game of posting the reels and, post, 5 times a week, whatever. My Instagram's just been, it's just my life, right? And the photos are almost always within like a week of what I'm doing. This is what I shot. I edited it. I like this. And then I post it. And so it's never like, that's probably why it doesn't grow, because I don't keep this consistent, like, gotta post 5 times a week, keep it in their face. So yeah, I'll edit like a set of photos and, kids will go off to school. I'll come in there, sit in that big room over there, post up in a chair, and I'll have no idea what I'm going to say. And I'll just kind of sit there, and like I'll lay out these photos and think, hey, I got a story set, or maybe it's just single image, whatever it is. And something in that image randomly will just pop into my head, and I'll just go off typing a couple paragraphs. I'm like, well, I guess that's done. I think I've said whatever I was trying to achieve. And, I send and then walk off and do whatever the heck else I'm doing for the rest of the day. But I was telling you that if I go back and you were to pull up an image, you're like, do you know what you talked about there? It might be a photo of my buddy and I skating fishing. And that post probably doesn't say a single thing about fishing in it. It's just like, maybe it was a feeling that I had that day when I was fishing and I recalled it while I was looking at the photo, or something to overcome crossed my mind. And I'll often go back and like see a post or a photo that I really like and then open it randomly and look at it. I'm like, who in the world wrote this? Like, it's like, that was often so wild tangent, man. So like when I worked on the ship, I kept a journal. It's actually back here, and pen and paper, right? And I would write in there. And at one time I had a digital app that I loved. It was called Memento. And I would every day wrote journal entries. And I think I still have the Excel backed up. I don't know. But I opened it up one day, like that journal, and was randomly, I was like, man, I haven't been in that thing in a long time. And started reading stuff. It's like, who wrote this? Like, I like some, I'll be honest, I really enjoy some of it. But even the wording, I'm like, that came out of my mouth? That was in my head? I was like, I put sentences together like this in a thought? I'm like, yeah. So if you like, people have asked me like, oh, you going to do this Sailor Notes book? I'm like, I wouldn't know where to even begin.
When you said that for a split second, I thought, man, it'd be kind of cool if you could just put something like that just for fun. Like, just, that'd be so cool. Like, but it's funny. Like, why would you? Like, you can't really remember the things you wrote. I guess, I don't know. Like, does it really matter if you remember the things you wrote? Like,
yeah, I guess not, because you can go back and reread it, right?
Yeah.
And it'll recall. It's like looking at a photo. Like, do I recall every photo I've ever taken? Heck no. I probably don't remember half the stuff I shot like 2 weeks ago. But then when you go back and revisit it, like, okay, for my 40th birthday, I went to a Thursday and Silverstein concert. I don't know if you remember the old school, like, the whole, like, I guess they were called post-hardcore, maybe, like screamo age. It's what I was into in college, a little high school and then college. Anyways, so I go to this show. Now I'm 40, right? And there was so much nostalgia to it, which led me down this tangent of building a playlist the other night of like all that old music. And then I randomly was looking for a photo. And so I logged into Facebook, which I don't get on ever. So if you're leaving me a message there, or if your friend requested me, it's not because I don't like you, but I don't have the app. I don't open it except I needed to find a photo. And so like, I just went down a rabbit hole of looking at all these old albums that I had saved, like in that screamo emo phase of like, wearing all black and haircuts and stuff. And it's like, dude, like those memories, I had not remembered some of the concerts that I had been at until I saw it. I was like, holy cow, I forgot that I saw those guys at Warped Tour. Oh, I saw those guys like the Bayside stop on Long Island, or, like we went 2 stops down or went to New York City and saw, Census Fail and saw him and all these random like Thursday when they were all little. Damn. But writing's the same way, right? That sometimes it pops in my mind, I dump it out, and then I'm usually done with it. Like,
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, and it makes total sense too. One of the things I wanted to get into before I asked the last 2 questions to close it out was, how did you get involved with Captain's Collective doing the field note stuff? So
Hunter Levine, that runs Captain's Collective. I actually don't know how we originally crossed, but honestly, it's probably Instagram. You know, like a DM or something. Maybe Friends for Association. We were hanging out, and I actually caught that redfish with him.
Nice.
Yeah.
That ain't small, that's for sure.
Yeah. We were on a family trip in Destin, and he was like, man, I live like right down the road. You should drive over and fish with me. And as my wife is very used to, she's like, who are you going fishing with tomorrow? Like we're on this family vacation for a week, you know, like her brother and sister, her mom kind of deal, that side of the family. And we're all upstairs, you know. It's like, who? I'm like, yeah, this guy Hunter. Like, I know him through Instagram. She's like, you've never met him? I'm like, no. But he lives like an hour away. I'm just going to go over there and go fish with him. Hey. And so I asked her brother, Nick, I was like, hey, you want to go fishing with me? He's like, yeah, who's this guy? I'm like, yeah, it's a friend of mine.
Yeah, like, best friends.
We've exchanged like 20 DMs, you know, like. So yeah, off we went. Shot a bunch of photos. I shoot photos when I go places just because I want to recall the memory and I want a story about it for myself. Yeah, I caught that fish with him. Now it hangs on the wall.
What's the story behind that fish?
Funny enough, so we were pulling around, just couldn't get on any fish really, and we went out in deeper water. Mm-hmm. That is not caught on fly rod. That was caught on a conventional rod.
It's totally fine.
Yeah. Just for people that are purists. I'm not a purist.
I used to be. I'm telling you right now, being a purist is not the move.
Yeah, like it was. Anyways, it didn't work there. So my brother-in-law, you know, he hooks up and he's like reeling it in. I'm like, that pole's not bending very much, and he literally catches this like little baby trout. Like
it's a monster.
Yeah. I'm like, are you sure that's not just like the weight of like, you know, the hook on there? Like, dude, that's not been. And he pulls this tiny, and I've got this funny photo of him holding it's tiny. And I don't even remember. I want to say it was a spoon. But anyways, I was reeling it in, and water was dark, right? It's Panama City or Panama Beach, right? And it couldn't have been 5 feet from the boat. And I'm just about to lift the rod just to like flick it back up and catch it. Mm-hmm. We're done kind of deal. And I'm pulling it up, and out of this darkness, this cold gold mass pops up and just hits it. And I was totally caught off guard, right? I'm just like trying to process, like, what did I just see? What happened? And then like you pop back to reality.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what the? Yeah. Fighting this thing. And I got these good photos, and that rod's bent. It's a little tiny rod too. It's all bent over. Wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, that's cool. Those beach front reds, man. I've had a couple of run-ins with those. I had one with.
That was actually in the bay.
I thought Panama Beach was on. You were on the beach side. That's crazy.
It's a big bay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were back in the bay system.
Oh, well, then this story may not have that much good context there, but the beach run stuff. I was with Tim O'Brien in the Port Mansfield jetties doing some tarpon stuff with my mom, and it was the fishing. The tarpon stuff was just dead, and Tim goes, let's just go back inside, we'll fuck around with some redfish and come back out. So we do that, we're having fun, and one of his friends calls him like, bro, it's on, like, get over here right now. And so we run back up Mansfield, turn over on the north side of the jetty, on the north one, or north side or east side of the jetty on the north side. Okay. And there's fish, but they're all deep. So my mom throws and she hooks this like a 25-pound jack, and I have a fly rod, and I had no sinking line, and I was just I wanted to do that on fly. I wanted to do it on fly, and I'm like telling Tim, Tim, let me switch to the rod. And to this day, I don't know why he never let me switch rods that had the sinking line, because I knew damn well he had one. But anyways, so he doesn't let me, and there's this mullet, and it's like out of nowhere it starts skipping across the surface, and I'm like, like target practice, I guess. And threw at it, and all of a sudden that mullet skirts off, and slowly out of what it must have been like greenish water, like milky green, this like face starts to kind of come out of it, and it was this big redfish, and just comes up, eats the fly, goes down, and Tim sees it. Tim starts yelling like, oh my God. And I'm like lit up, because in my head I'm like, oh man, like he's never gonna hear the end of it. Like, he made this so much harder than it had to be. Well, I was still like 12 or like 14 at the time, and so I went in for this big hook set and pulled it right out of its mouth, and I wanted to die. It was that, and one of my biggest tarpon ever was two of my biggest heartbreak stories. But I look at a fish like that, and just it gets me amped, because I know it's just, they look so cool. When they're big and they move fast, like you don't expect it. Like, it's cool. Yeah,
especially they're being completely dark, the water, so it comes out of nowhere.
Oh, totally.
And again, I mean, literally within 5 feet of the boat, like I wouldn't expect a fish to come impact, I mean, probably like
smart enough to
right. Nah. Yeah, he's like, man, that's sketch. I know what that is. Yeah, like probably a half second later, that thing would have been out of the water and just It's like, wow, yeah. It was a ton of fun. But then there you go. So yeah, became buddies, caught up. He calls to check in on things, whatever. And he had this idea. And so he came over. We've done a couple of those. We'll see where we keep going with them. You know, for me, it was just about helping him. He's like,
Totally.
I got this other outlet, this thing that I think we could do together. I'm like, yeah, like I can sit in BS. Like
Exhibit A.
yeah, right. I just like hanging out with people, you know? Yeah. And so he's got a lot of life values and he's like really in depth. I don't know if have you ever met him?
I've yet to meet him. I'm sure eventually I mean, if I keep doing this, hopefully I would.
Yeah. You both can have like your podcast set up, like sitting next to each other.
That'd be the silliest thing. I thought for a split second we were gonna have to do something like that with Peter Capel. Luckily, it was just on mine because I could bet the logistics would be kind of difficult, like 4 microphones and
So yeah, that's where it went. We were just talking about stuff we're both kind of passionate about, but I don't realize it. I feel like he's more passionate. I guess not passionate. He's more thoughtful about it. Like the books that he's reading, I read all over the creation. Like never seem to have a game plan on what I'm going to be reading. Could be history today. Could be kind of satire tomorrow.
Could be the book I gave you.
Yeah. There's not as much reading in there. A lot of like viewing, sitting. And since I'm off for my 2 weeks, I'm going to probably have a beer here in a little bit and I'll just sit out and
I hope
check
so.
that thing. Yeah, I'm going to go light that fire because it's going to be freezing.
It is
literally
ridiculously cold today.
Totally.
So to kind of just end it off, I always ask the last 2 questions. And I feel like someone who's done so many different things will have interesting answers. Sometimes I've not had interesting answers, though.
I feel pressured now.
No, you shouldn't. But looking back on everything that you've done, like from the very, very beginning, you know, like even shooting that Robin with that BB gun through to now, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently? You don't have to say the regrets, but you know, things that you're like, oh man, like I don't wish I would have done that differently. I wish I would have had that lesson before XYZ, etc.
I wish that I had learned more about fishing with my dad. Like he did everything, right? We were kids. Like I wish I had learned more of the intricacies on why he was picking, you know, certain line and leaders and why he was going through his tackle box a certain way or why he chose to tie it that way to be a better angler. You know, like, I don't own a boat like these days. I don't own a boat. I have no intention of owning a boat.
Crazy dichotomy.
Right. People are always, they're like, what? How does that?
Took me a second to process that.
And I always lean back to like, dude, the first time I fished with JT, I'll say this. I was sitting on the back with him. My dad's up on the bow and they're like geeking out on boats, right? Like my dad has been involved in building all kinds of boats. Pretty much his entire life, you know, from molds and they're going into like, you know, the hull shape and all this kind of stuff and geeking out. And I don't understand that aspect of it. Although I work on a ship, like I get shapes of ships and everything that goes into it. But these intricacies of a skiff, you know, the particular
like the naval architecture stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like why this kind of tunnel and why is it going to feather this long and why is the hull raked this way or whatever it may be. And I was like, you should buy his boat. Because JT was selling it at the time.
I think Tim O'Brien actually picked it off of him.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, the 13-gallon with the one with the little Texas thing on the inside.
It might have been. This was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, that pretty much adds up. Could be. I don't know.
Logo, yeah, his logo that looks like Texas. Yeah. And I turned to him, put my hand on his back. I was like, JT, for the price of that boat, I can fish with you the rest of my life. I mean, like realistically, right? Like you think about the value, what the boat cost, and I get it. The cost of it is not always what it's worth, right? For somebody that fishes all the time, like that's just part of the cost. Like, what do I spend duck hunting? Couldn't tell you, right? Because the value doesn't matter to me because this is what I enjoy doing. But when it comes to fishing, there are people that are great at it, right?
Yeah,
and even buddies that are I'd call good and not always great, but they're on the boat all the time. They're fishing so much that they know where the fish are. They understand like what they're checking for on the tide and right. oh, watercolor's been this way. So they've moved like for this bay system, they're on the East Shore over there. Or they've moved into deeper water, or maybe we should go further to Sabine and they're up in the marsh, whatever it may be. Those people are so good at what they do. And because I'm not spending all my time into it, it's not because I don't want to. Look, I would love to be a hardcore fly fisherman, but I know that I consume so much of my time already
doing other stuff. It's hard to be a jack of all trades and a master of one.
Yes. Right. And so I am that. I tinker in all kinds of stuff.
I guess
I'm not
sorry.
I don't think I'm a master in any of it.
I was paraphrasing, but yeah.
Yeah, it's totally. Right. But because they're so good at it, I look at the ROI. Like, what's my return on investment? If I buy a boat, then that means I need to go fishing a bunch in order to make it worthwhile, right? So I need to be either scouting or I need to be fishing a ton to get good at it. And then I'm going to come back a lot and not do so well. And what's the return on that? Just to be out on the water? Like, my kids are 9 and 6, so they're not going to want to be on the boat all day long, right? And then that means if it's not hunting season, I'm going to go fishing, and that's more time away from them because they're not at the age to be involved in it, and they're not going to enjoy it the same way, right? And,
totally.
And fly fishing is not I don't think a thing for a 6-year-old. Like he's not going to be casting. He's not going to be pulling for me yet.
Yet.
Yeah. When he gets to that age, we'll change it.
Yeah.
But because of that, don't own a boat. And I either do pay for guides to go with or have friends that's just their passion and they're good at. And if you guys let me have a spot on the boat, like, oh, hey, you want to go fishing? Like, I don't have anybody midweek because of my schedule. I love being with those people because I can learn so much from them. And again, if we don't come home with fish, so what? I was around somebody that I enjoyed spending my time with. I've just learned where to put my emphasis on. Man, I can spend my time duck hunting and tinkering with that. But the fishing aspect, like, I'm not going to be great at it without putting this much time into it. And so therefore, if I can't, I'm not. So I reel back and I utilize people that are, I don't want to say utilize because that's the wrong word. Like, it sounds
but
like
it is true. Like I get it. What I'm getting from what you're saying is you don't do it enough to where the boat would be a tool. It would just be a convenience.
Yeah. It'd be something else I'd have to upkeep, right?
Quite literally, yes.
Literally. And deal with. So, like, man, I'll put all the gas in your boat. I'll,
buy all your gummy bears. I don't care.
Yeah.
That was for Rick.
I bring all the, he loves them. I'll bring all the snacks. I'll bring all the beverages. I'll bring my camera. I might have one good story to tell you during the day. I try to be a good, good guest in the boat. But yeah, like, I'm going to Alaska in August, go a little joint fishing hunting trip, do some fly fishing, right? But like, I don't tell anybody I'm not a angler. Like, I enjoy fishing and I love going up there to go do it. Like you were asking those questions. I want to go do the tarpon in the Keys because the water's clear and it's a very specific style of fishing. I want to do the golden dorado down in Argentina, like in the rivers.
Stuff,
yeah, right. Like being in Alaska in those rivers, like very different ways of fly fishing up there. Drift boats or being up on the shore, like wading a point and finding these salmon that were all in pockets. Like, I just love doing things, but I know that I'm not that great at it. So spending my time to go out there and just kind of like, well, just figure it out.
Yes, I see where the ROI tends to falter.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's the thing I wish I had learned from my dad. So I had that skill set to just kind of put in my bag of stuff that I do. Totally. Be better at.
And great answer. See, there was no pressure to be had there. Last question before I get out of here is, as a word of advice to like the younger generation, think maybe kids are just a little older than your oldest right now, like 12, 14, maybe starting to like dabble in, hey, maybe I could do this. This is something I want to do. I want to be in the industry. Even from working retail to captaining a ship that's as big as the ones that you get to work with or whatever, just an outdoor industry. What is a piece of advice you'd give them for, I don't know, longevity, success, or just like happiness within the space?
I think you need to find what drives you personally first. And when you're out meeting people, don't be looking what value they can add to your life, what value you can add to theirs. Like, I feel the same way when super fortunate to work with brands, like Howler and Turtlebox, and in the hunting space, the Duck Camp guys and Lacrosse Boots and, Vortex Optics, whatever it is that I've got to be a part of. I always feel fortunate that they let me into their space to bring, hopefully I'm adding value to them versus, hey, can I get gear from you?
Yeah.
Right? Like they can give out gear to anybody. Like what value do you add to other people? And it's not just for your professional pursuit or, your hobbies. It should be your purpose in life, right? Like add value to other people. Otherwise, what's the point of being there?
Yeah, totally. No, I totally get it. It's a really good way to kind of end the episode. Before I end it, though, from what you did see when you did scroll through it, I would like to know what you thought of the book so far before you get into it, because I hope tonight in the evening I get a text from you or a phone call that tells me in depth how you liked it, but just what you've seen so far.
Yeah, so people that don't know, you've got this incredible book titled Laguna. Mm-hmm. I was at Turtlebox HQ last week, and I saw it sitting down, and I honestly thought it was one of the Yeti books. It's produced of that caliber. And I was totally caught off guard because when you sent me that email, you're like, hey, when we meet, I've got this book. I want you to see it. Maybe I think you had asked like for a photo or something.
No, I asked if you wanted to write I think the prologue or the foreword.
I'm so bad with emails.
It's okay. At that point, I was like, man, like I could see why someone. No, I didn't think like that. I was like, I could see why like it would just come off weird. That's why I was like, hey, man, like, bro, I'd be willing to like compensate, like whatever, But I didn't really like. It was like, hey, like at the end of the day, it's hard to portray what I had in my head until I was able to put it out there, So I wasn't tripping about that at all. But it was something along those lines of actually what I had seen you write on Instagram. Now knowing it's like, whew.
Man, I'm glad I didn't ask him to go on a tangent. Yeah. So in my head, I was like, I had never met you. Obviously, I knew what the podcast was. I had seen plenty of people that had been on it. In the title of it, I'm like, oh, the guy's got to be down in Padre, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were living down there at the time. Yeah, not knowing what it was, I'm thinking, it's like, it's another guy's like putting out a photo book, like some of his work. It's like a soft cover. Maybe it's like 20, 30
pamphlet, booklet.
Yeah.
I think 6 damn pounds.
Yeah. Dude, it is beautiful. It's his hardbound book. It's the caliber of the Yeti production books. And then I flipped open the thing and because Docs was like, yeah, that's Andre's book. And I was like, what? Like, that's the Laguna book he's telling me? He's like, yeah, I felt the same way. I had no idea. And then it pops up here. It's like, this is a work of art. It truly is.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I flipped open, saw a couple, the layouts are done very well. Obviously, beautiful imagery. I did not get to read anything yet because I was just glancing at it there. But now I've got a copy. So I'm going to crack open a beer here later on and sit in my chair back there and flip through it.
Cool. I mean, with that being said, I don't want to delay that process for you any longer, so I'll probably just get out of here right now.
Hey, if you'd like to share a beer, you're more than welcome.
I might take you up on that.
All right, sweet.